Hey everyone, welcome to my channel Frantastic Makeup. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I stumbled through applying my makeup for this sparkly copper halo eye. I say stumbled through only because I haven't done halo eye looks very often and feel like some of what I did probably could have been skipped. So if you like makeup videos from an amateur makeup enthusiast and want to see me stumble through more looks in the future, be sure to hit that subscribe button and bell notification so you get alerts and keep watching. My skin was already prepped with my preferred skincare products prior to hitting the record button. I'm getting really good at saying that now. Anyways, as always for the first step in my makeup application, with my fingers I applied an eyeshadow primer over my entire upper lid from lash line to brow, as well as along my lower lid. I prefer using my fingers when applying primer because it allows me to feel when the primer has set. With a rounded contour shadow brush, I applied my contour powder as a transition shade to my upper eyelids. I don't do halo eyes very often. In fact, I can probably count the number of times on one hand. So my main goal with transition placement was to carve out the shape of my eye socket so I could have a template of where to place the deeper colors coming in future steps. If you've watched my recent videos, you know I typically favor winging out my eyeshadow, so it took a lot of concentration for me to not just quote-unquote apply by habit. With my transition shade in place, I started applying one of the eyeshadow shades that I think can probably be skipped. Because I was super paranoid too about covering too much of my lid area, I used a mini shader brush that was probably a bit too small, but I really wanted to make sure my color placement was exactly where I wanted it. So, using my super tiny shader brush, I applied a matte eyeshadow in a deep coral shade to my outer and inner corners, making sure to leave the center of my lids bare. I also dragged the coral color into my crease, but only slightly, as I still wasn't sure about how to place some of the deeper shades yet to come. As I'm watching this back during editing though, I guess you could consider this to be like a secondary transition shade for the transition shade, blah, blah, blah. But let's not make makeup any more complicated than it already is, shall we? To deepen the corners of my eye area with the same super tiny shader brush, I honestly don't know why I didn't grab a bigger brush by this point. I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. But anyway, with my tiny shader brush, I began applying a deep rose eyeshadow to the same corner areas where I applied the previous coral shade. I approached my application of this color with the same apprehension I had in the previous steps, mainly making sure the color was applied only where I wanted it. After I had the color in place, I questioned my methods as well as my sanity, then grabbed my rounded contour brush to blend out any harsh lines and to pull the color into my crease a little bit. At this point, I felt like I had set a good base shape and now wanted to add some depth to my corners as well as my crease. To do this, I used a tapered crease brush that I finally upgraded to and applied a matte brown eyeshadow that has a reddish undertone. While applying, I tried to make sure my placement was limited to the deeper areas of my corners and then blended inward while still leaving the center of my lids bare. And when blending the brown shade into my deeper crease, my focus was making sure my socket area was where the color was most intense with its saturation. Here is where I moved on to the area of my lids that I left bare, but here is also where I start to just play around with different eyeshadows because I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go with a color story. This step could be skipped, especially since the shade I'm applying here gets covered with other eyeshadows in later steps, but I also feel like this eyeshadow helps add a bit of dimension like seen in this picture. So if you want to include this step, with a short shader brush, apply a copper eyeshadow that has a soft metallic finish. Then blend out the copper eyeshadow with the colors applied in previous steps, making sure to not go too far into the corners or crease with this shade. This step is one that I feel can definitely be skipped because, in my opinion, by the end of the look, this shade doesn't really pull through very much. I wanted to include it in the video though for transparency. So using my fingers, I applied a fuchsia eyeshadow that has a pink sparkled metallic finish. This color was applied over the copper shade used in the previous step, and I may have gone a little overboard applying it around my crease. At this point I start screaming internally, thinking I had completely messed up the look and just hoped I would be able to salvage it in the end. So now I grabbed another palette that I knew had a lighter metallic shade in it and applied it to the center of my lid using my fingers, just like in the previous step. I will admit, after placing the pink metallic eyeshadow higher into my crease than I wanted, I was a bit more cautious in how I applied this shade. My big fingers are probably the reason I don't usually use them, but the metallic shades I used in this look are better applied with fingers when dry than with using a brush. After filling in the center of my lid, I wanted to fix some of the areas where I blended the metallic shades out too far, so I went back in with the brown shade and my tapered crease brush and touched up the corners and crease areas. As I reapplied the brown shade to each area, I also blended the brown shade inward with the metallics to help create a smoother shift in colors and textures. From here, I began applying the various eyeshadows to my lower lid to see how everything would balance out before deciding if I wanted to add another color to the mix. So, starting with the deep rose shade, then the brown shade, I applied each color respectively to my inner and outer corners of my lower lids. And likewise with the metallic eyeshadows, they were applied to the center of my lower lid in the same order as they were applied on my upper lid: copper, fuchsia, then the duochrome. Each shade was blended as they were applied using a small shader brush for better precision. With my eye appearing more balanced now, I decided I wanted the center of my lid to pop more, so with my fingers, I applied an eyeshadow that has a sheer base but lots of light gold sparkle. The color was mainly applied down the center of my upper lid and then blended a bit with the colors applied to my corners. And like with the other metallic shades, I also applied this gold sparkler of an eyeshadow to the center of my lower lid. Somehow I managed to line my eyes entirely out of shot, so here's a clip of the top of my sparkly head while I lined my upper and lower waterlines and my upper lash line. I also lined my outer third of my lower lash line and smudged it out with a brush. With the majority of my eye makeup done at this stage, I started to move on to the rest of my makeup. After dabbing a bit of foundation on my face, I blended and buffed out the foundation until even. I usually just apply enough foundation until I'm happy with the coverage, as I don't like the feeling of heavy makeup on my face. To accentuate my cheekbones, I applied a contour powder to the hollows of my cheeks as well as to my temple area and blended the powder toward my hairline. With a large fan face brush, I dusted a soft, shimmery highlight powder to the tops of my cheeks and blended the powder upward toward my hairline in a sweeping motion. For the last step with my cheeks, I applied a peach-colored blush with a light gold shimmer using a duo fiber face brush. To finish setting my foundation, I applied a translucent setting powder to my face with a large face brush, but mainly to the areas of my face where a powder product had not already been applied. This is a tip I remember hearing from Eve Pearl way back in the day and have used throughout my 30s to help keep my makeup from feeling heavy or having that cakey look. With my face makeup done and my brows filled in, I moved on to the last eyeshadow product for this look, a brow highlight. So, using a shadow blending brush, I applied a frosty pale beige eyeshadow that has a shimmery finish. The color was first applied with a shadow blending brush to my brow bone. I then blended the highlight with the transition shade with a large shadow buffer brush. In a lot of my looks, I tend to play down my lips, mainly because I prefer for my eyes to be the focal point. So for a lip color in this look, I went with a neutral beige shade. It does have a slight touch of pink to it, but not too much. I wanted the color to balance more so with the coppery tones of this look than with any of the pink undertones. Lastly, I applied 2 coats of mascara to my upper and lower lashes. Each coat was a different mascara, but both of them were black and matte. And that does it. Hopefully you guys liked this makeup look. products specifically used while recording are listed in the upcoming credits. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. If you have any constructive feedback, suggestions, or insights, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and if you know someone who might enjoy this tutorial, why not send it their way?
All products used were personally purchased by me, Kuuipo1207, for personal use. Products mentioned were not received as gifts and/or were not provided for promotional use. Additionally, financial compensation has not been provided for in return for the production of this video.
If you managed to make it to this point, then holy wow, I salute you. All joking aside though, if you're looking for more content from me, stop by my channel. A lot of it is way outdated, but I've got a couple of videos lined up and ready for uploading soon, so you may as well make sure you're subscribed and set up for notifications. Thank you again so much for watching, and until next time, stay safe and stay sane.